just see red and it's like a go? Or
Yeah.
what's it like inside of the head of a Molesky?
I can feel it start to come, and I'm like, sometimes, dude, there's days where I'm like, I should work from home today because I don't want to bring that to the office.
You can feel like you wake up literally on the wrong side of the bed.
It's not even the wrong side of the bed. It's like, I'm trying to go get in a workout, or I'm trying to get the kids to school, and shit's just not happening. Like, I'm late, something's off. I got emails coming in that I can't get to. And then it'll be like something that another email that comes up, and I'm driving and I'm like, fuck, how did this get missed? And like, it's something that I remember telling someone about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks prior. And then like from there, I'm driving for the next hour and a half. It's usually on the weeks that I've got my kids, because I know like I only have so much time before I have to leave and go get them again. I think the worst times I get mad though is like on my own neglect, which is like, okay, I need to personally see this thing through because it's that important. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that you kind of get like that gut feeling about, where you're like, man, this seems a little off. You gotta keep a thumb on those type of things.
You can tell.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about it. You can kind of sense it.
You can feel it.
People are off. Something small is off. So you finally look into it and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Well, going back to what you were talking about earlier, like I get the most distraught when my routine's thrown off in the morning too. So same thing, like you have a plan and you get pulled opposite ways and you literally feel like you got nothing done because all you're doing is turning on the fire hose and just spraying it down, dude.
Yep. And I don't think like there's a way to completely avoid those days. It's going to be part of what we do, But like, think about when we didn't have what we had. I can remember back when I didn't have anything, and the type of problems that were coming up were like huge bills I didn't have money for, in my early 20s, or, the whole different level. So it's actually, if you can reframe it to where you're at, they're good problems to have for the most part, because they're able to be solved instead of people that have issues that they don't know what to do with.
Yeah. Your problems change as you level up.
Yeah.
If they're not changing, then you're not leveling up.
That's right.
They'll never stop, but the way they come in, they always change.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Got a little deep. Start off episode
15. Just kidding.
Skip through 10. Episode 5, Apps and Asphalt. We were talking about kind of earlier, just, some of the stuff that was getting you agitated. And it's the small things that matter the most. And when small things get missed and they slip through the cracks, that's when the big problems happen. Unfortunately, the small things get swept under for way too long to where they become the big problems until you realize it. And sometimes it's too late.
Sometimes it's too late, man. That's crazy. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's how do you minimize the little losses, because the little losses in contracting, facility management, property management could end up being big losses. It's the cones that you've left on a job site for months on end that, everything looks great, but there's no accountability. You said you were going to pick them up a week after, you didn't do it, and you've got people wondering what's going on, all the way over to like the punch list items that are holding up money on a project, and they're the last things being scheduled or whatever. Luckily, we've been able to minimize a lot of what we've seen in the past. When I'm looking at our aging report now, this time of year, it's significantly better than what it's ever been in the past. But you know me, it's like we're shooting for A's across the board here. So, I'm like talking with some of these guys about what we've got. It's improved dramatically. I think we've been able to put some good processes in place through technology that is instilling us to be able to have to follow a process, have to be able to check those boxes somewhere along the way.
I think for a certain period of time, when you're like just getting started, it's just kind of like a free for all. It's a get it done mentality, and which is fine. But if you're scaling too quick, then at some point you're not going to be able to catch up to that. And that's honestly, I feel like NPP was that way for a while because we were scaling too quickly and we just got stuff done however we needed to get done.
But it gets messy.
It gets real messy, and it's hard to stop. First of all, you can't really ever just put the brakes on completely, but at least slow down like times like now and undo the mess.
Yes. They're like, we call them fire drills. So the fire drills that we've come across certainly aren't the same as what they were, and they're not always at the same level. But when you're a small company, it's I'm out here working on the job. I'm going back. I'm invoicing the project. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. You got to get the COIs over. You've got a punch list that you missed something back there. And I feel for those guys because I know what it's like. But you have to take care of the hot items because, first of all, you get usually one chance to make a good impression. You got to take care of that first impression, first and foremost. Then you have to take care of anything that's going to hold up your money. You've invested all this money into doing a project. You have to take care of the punch list items to make sure you receive all your money. And then it's staying on top of your receivables, making sure people got their bill, making sure you know what day they're paying it. So that is a job, and sometimes some of these smaller guys that don't have the money need to find somebody to help them bridge those gaps.
Yep.
Because those are the things that put the smaller guys out of business, unfortunately.
Yeah, those small little details.
Yeah.
And the most frustrating thing for that I remember when I was estimating was the small stuff like you send a proposal, you're going balls to the wall. A couple weeks later, your client randomly asks you, "Hey, can you separate and break this out, or can you add this?" If you don't stop and document stuff like that, like in whatever your phone, your notes, you will forget about it. And when you forget about it, is when the problems start to happen.
Yep.
So that's why I've trained like that's why when I would go estimate, I would literally send the bid in my truck.
Dude, you are literally one of the best people I've ever met with that. And it's hard to keep up with, but it's very impressive if people could learn from that. So like what is it from you that makes you want to we talk about Ohio only handle it one time. But what is it within you that makes you think like that?
Honestly, dude, I hate having a to-do list. I walked into Nick's office today just to turn the heat up a little bit because it was freezing this morning. But walked into his office and it said, "Get ahead and stay ahead." And that's something I try to live my life by and all assets, whether I'm eating, whether I'm drinking, whether I'm working, whether I'm working out, whatever it is, I'm trying to get ahead and stay ahead. So with that, I knock out the mentality of only wanting to do it once and getting it done as soon as possible. So I don't
that.
like when I was estimating, I would, like I said, go scope it, wheel it, turn on my hotspot, get in the truck, move on to the next. So I knew that whole task of scoping and getting an estimate out to whatever job it was completely done.
Yeah.
Move on to the next.
Yep. That's perfect.
That's all it really was. Is and with everything, I hate like the hanging fruit of like, the small stuff that like, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that.
Because it's not going to go away. It does not go away.
It doesn't go away.
You can avoid it. You can ignore it.
Yep.
The neglect is like the thing that is like the biggest hot button, is don't neglect it. It's getting pulled somewhere along the way, and if you wait till later, it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
So.
And people, and I think everyone has the priority list in their head on what's important, and there's sometimes where you have a high priority item, but then you have an even higher priority fire that needs to get addressed. and you just forget about it. Dude.
Yeah. And we see it on the other side of the shoe too. So property and facility managers. I mean, unfortunately, we see quite a big turnover in properties for starters.
Yes.
So, what was over with this company is now over with this company. Who was over here is now over there. And if we were to put simply, a lot of what is happening, it's stuff that's been overlooked, stuff that's been neglected for too long, a liability issue that turned into a big lawsuit. Yeah. So, I'm going to name drop Spot on Site, but like the reason I love that, especially for property managers, is you pull it up, you take a picture while you're on site, you have it, and you got to go back and revisit it, and you can file it, get it stored, take care of it, make sure it's good. And it's a way for you to kind of help track it. But then also on the same shoe, when you have a stubborn ownership group that doesn't want to spend money, at least you've done your piece. When they say, hey, we lost this tenant because you guys neglected this, and we have already sent them documentation that we requested it through with pictures, a spot, and pricing, they have something to go back and rebuttal and hopefully not lose a client or a tenant that is worth probably, millions of dollars.
Yeah. And the time stamping is so important for these people.
Yep.
It's not people need to think about like, if it's not an if, it's a when. Something's bound to go wrong. So property management side, you're gonna have a lawsuit come up on one of your properties. It's not if, it's when.
Yep.
You need to start documenting it by doing the small stuff, the small detail stuff in your day-to-day process that's going to protect you for when that does happen.
Yep.
Gabriel went out last year, did a walk with this HOA, noticed a trip hazard by the dumpster pad. Pointed it out, did a spot on site, dropped a spot on it. They decided to hold off on that area. Literally 2 weeks later, they called him, said, we need to get this fixed right away. An older resident was walking out, take his trash out, slipped and fell and died. So think about how much like money and liability and lawsuit that is when somebody dies on your property.
Plus the pain that is associated with that person's family.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's a big responsibility that we have as professionals, and from general contractors all the way through the boots on the ground, and then property management, facility management, to make sure that there's always going to be someone complaining, okay, whatever, but on the big grand scheme of things, it's up to us to make sure that we're locking in our trailers safely. So we've got safe automobiles going on the roads. It's up to them to make sure that the trip and fall thing is it's a 1 in 100, but at the same time, it's like what's the downfall if you don't take care of it? It's huge. It's very significant.
Oh, absolutely.
Reaches beyond money and stuff.
So it's especially in that instance, it's an extreme instance, but it happens.
Sure. Yep.
We've tried to dial in like the small detail stuff with our sales presentation, with our emailing signatures, like the small stuff to making our trucks, get them washed every single week. So when they pull up to the job site, people see a clean name, make sure we have cones that match. I think contractors, shifting back to them, especially the small scale ones, are missing on the details.
Yep. I agree.
That's why they can't get ahead with, getting the clients who you want. If you want to be a subcontractor to bigger contractors for the rest of your life or however long you run your business, keep doing what you're doing. But if you want to actually work directly with the customers you want to work towards, you need to get these small details dialed in.
Yep, I agree.
So it's all whatever role you want to play.
It is how you want to track it. I think just making things as simple as possible. Like everybody's going 120 miles an hour nowadays, and having something that you can quickly access, document, notate, be able to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing for your role within your company is huge. How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah.
Right. So I just don't like doing stuff twice like you. Drives me nuts.
You're taking a step forward and two back.
Yep.
So having to go back to it is the absolute worst. So, and unfortunately, you got to make some changes when you are doing too much of that. And that could be personnel changes, that could be program changes, process changes. But
Yep.
if you're finding yourself constantly doing things twice, huge problem.
Making the call twice.
Yep.
You know, whatever. Walking back out there to the same area that you've walked over 5 different times just to, notate it on a map somewhere. Just handle it once.
Yep. Ohio. Yeah.
Just handle it once.
I love how you came up with that one.
That was actually from Paul Molesky.
Was it?
I swear. I
Why
swear.
Ohio? I mean, just
I don't know.
He
It used to
said it
drive me nuts, dude. It used to drive me nuts. We'd be on the seal coat crew, and, we'd miss a crack here, and we'd have to go back the next day. And he's like, God damn it. I told you. Ohio it. Just only handle it once. Go walk that parking lot. Make sure nothing's sinking out there. I don't want to go back there. I want to be on another job. I'm like, okay.
which makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Like I said, having to go back for one little crack, which the customer is going to call out.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and that's one thing too. I would like to teach our guys, do some training this off season, is show them the lens of what a customer sees. Because when you're paving 500 tons, it all looks the same to the customer. But when you pave 500 tons and you have water bottles and a tack stain from your boot on the corner that you wouldn't even expect, that's what the customer
100%. And
sees.
then you get your foreman in the habit of making a walk around, trip around the perimeter, filming that, making sure everything's good. We had a sub on one of our projects, 2 months ago. Somehow they hit a line. There's a big discrepancy. We have to take ownership of it no matter what. We are working in the area. And that's why we're forcing subs moving forward to use Spot on Site, because we need documentation on each and every location, everything that we can, just to protect ourselves, because now it's a $10,000 bill that we have to $10,000 bill on an emergency basis, which is, it is what it is, but it could have been avoided or treated a little bit faster. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, just it's your word against the customers at
Exactly.
that point if you don't have anything documented.
Exactly.
I've made sure when I've used to send change orders before we had a process, that every change order I had the guys take picture of the tape measure, like for instance this concrete job. I had to do some over excavation. The concrete was actually 10 inches versus 6 inches what I bid. So I had him on site when they called me, my foreman. I had him take a picture of it with the tape measure, send him a change order. Long story short, finished the job, wrapped up, sent him the change order. That was one of the jobs that they weren't paying for a long time. So finally, after like 2 months of getting a hold of them, they're like, well, we haven't paid because you guys charged us too much for this change order. Nobody notified this. So I went back in my email, copied, pasted it, sent it to them. They said, okay,
Yep.
we're sorry we missed that.
Yep.
But it was by doing the small step of making sure you have all the details to cover our ass.
I agree.
Pretty much. So
I agree.
what kind of you're really good at like looking at numbers and projecting forecasts, especially with this business. So like you talking about earlier how you can like see when something's a little off. What kind of things are you like catching that could be off that indicate you that something's wrong or we're missing something when it comes to like the financial report?
The first thing I'm looking at is the AR report, anything that's beyond 60 days. Obviously, there's a select few clients that are general contractors that have retainage that's stipulated within your contracts.
Oh, yeah, retainage.
Contractors, you should always try to negotiate your retainage amount from 10% down to 5%. There is a negotiation amount within there, so if you guys can do that up front, that always helps the process. But when I'm looking at stuff and I see retainage that is actually still 10%, because we've kind of got a rule now internally that we're not taking anything on that's more than 5%.
Yep.
That's an indicator to me something was missed somewhere, even up front in the process. When I'm seeing stuff that's out there a little bit longer, anything that's beyond that, 1,400. I looked at one today that was 130 days is like $1,400, and I'm like, what's going on with this? Every little bit counts along the way, and everything you're putting your money into is an investment on a return within 30 to 60 days.
That's a good way of putting it, that every job when you go to perform it is actually an investment.
Every job that you are doing is an investment to yourself that you are going to gain 20 to 30, if you've got a better market, maybe more than that percent on that money. So it's almost like gambling, but it should be a sure thing.
Yeah.
When you're missing $1,000 on a $2,000 job, $3,000 job, something's off. And so a lot of times it's a matter of like, this person probably didn't even get their invoice. Like, how is the follow-up process? What does that look like? So just digging in and asking questions. If you really want to know more about your company, look at your AR report, AP as well, but look at your AR report, and you're going to be able to start from the top, the oldest, and work your way back down with calls and emails. And a lot of times it's, I never received this, or, whatever. But requests for early closeouts too with the GCs. I always talk to the GCs, and I'm like, I kind of spin it a little bit here, so we can maybe pause this. But I tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, it's a $10,000 retainage. If that is going to put you guys in a bind, I understand. But look, we would like to be closed out. We paid our materials, we paid our labor, we paid our trucking. Like, we would really appreciate to close this project out. And when you say it like that, it gives them kind of like we've got the money to do that. Sometimes it's not necessarily that, but it almost like deflates the ego. Like, we're this big GC. I love it. We want your work, but we also want to be paid quickly because, again, it's an investment. So
yeah, and back to the details matter.
Yep.
We've really scaled back on working with general contractors because of their terms and conditions in their contracts. So we've put a lot more intentional effort of really scrubbing this, and don't feel like you need to be the superhero that knows the contractor or the contract language. Pay a contract attorney, preferably, a construction contract attorney, somebody who understands the verbiage, to scrub these contracts, because they could save you hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars
100%.
by one or two words by catching that.
Absolutely. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
You're good.
I think the biggest thing is when you go to do this, you find an attorney that, one, will have a quick turnaround for you, because you need to get a quick turnaround. You're going to have to pay them, but that's worth the money, because if you don't do it up front, you'll feel it on the end. But you let them know, like, I'm looking out for payment terms. I'm looking out for stuff that defers us. Like, what is contract termination terms look like? What does if there's bond, what is everything around the stuff what are the liabilities that we need to look at? And those are the things that we need to go back to the negotiations on. Yep. And sometimes, like you said, not every job's a good job. And if the risk versus reward is too great, we still turn work down, unfortunately,
It's not, you don't ever feel good turning work down, but it's for the betterment of the company. And we've got a lot more selective, and, people need to get in the position of, if you do have a good, solid core group of customers that you can depend on every single year, you'll make at least, $2-3 million from these customers, and your goal is only like 5 or 6 million for the year. You can be more selective with the work you take.
Yes.
Put your company in better positions. Everybody's done it. You say yes. You never know. Every time a call comes in for a lead, you never know if you're going to get that job awarded, if it's going to go good, or if it's going to go south. But you're able to at least do some due diligence if you can put yourself in a position to be more selective with the kind of work you're in.
And those jobs that you, like you said, that gut feeling like it's kind of risky. It's a little outside, not typically our type of client. This is a federal contract. We do this work all the time, but it's a federal contract. I'm sure we can get through it. If you're feeling that feeling at all within your gut, you need to go with it. You need to listen to it, and you need to think about what does 3 to 6 months look like for this type of work? Where are your risks at? Because when you start reframing stuff like that, nobody wants to lose money. Just, hey, I'm going to shelf out all this money and go in on this huge, nice, big contract that looks like it's great for us, only to get little to no return because they have beat you up through return trips in scope or whatever along the way.
Yeah.
We've been there.
We've been there for sure. Yeah, and it's just being more selective. And even like if you meet your client on site and you go scope and you're really not like feeling them that much, you don't feel like, okay, this is somebody I'd want to do work for, don't be afraid to pass on that opportunity.
I agree.
Because it all comes to a head at one point.
I agree.
And like managing, so there's levels to it. So we're kind of like in the middle. So we have subcontractors, some certified partners that work for us, but we also work for some of these larger GCs as a subcontractor. So there's games to play at each level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Managing the relationships with contractors, let them know as a subcontractor the expectation that you have for them, and then vice versa, because at the end of the day, like GCs get most of the big opportunities. So that's why you get so many invites on Building Connected. But you can partner with good GCs that are going to actually pay you on time, that are going to work with your schedule and going to be understanding, instead of GCs that you're at our beck and call. We don't give a crap what time of year it is. When this is done, you guys are coming out to pave. So be more selective. Learn how to play the game with the big dogs, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And don't feel like, because you want to hit a certain number that you need to take on that kind of job, because the ones that you feel forced to take on because you're in maybe a tighter financial spot are always the ones that are going to go bad.
Yep. And think about it. Is this money that I can lose going into slow season by chance and get out through springtime with no hiccups? That's something you need to think about, something I consider, when we're looking at some of these projects and deciding, okay, we've been awarded it, now it comes to contract time. Let's see what that looks like. There's almost like a second vetting process on both sides,
Doesn't the sales process doesn't actually start till, the contract comes.
Yeah.
That's when the real sales starts,
Yep.
especially in the contracting space,
For sure.
You're selling the performance of the job, the closeout, etc. So
Yeah. Well, I hope that we've been able to give some great information on both sides of the fence. Not be too redundant, but also give some people a different perspective to look at. I think that we've had a very broad eye from selling software to property managers, which are typically our clients.
Yep.
That are even doing stuff like tenant improvements, up to GCs, back over to contractor standpoint, and hopefully
it's a big spectrum of it.
Absolutely,
really.
Yeah.
Hopefully, sorry to cut you off on that,
Good.
But just hopefully you guys are understanding that it's really your company's success lies in the small stuff, almost more than the big stuff.
Yep.
And too many small missed details will put you in a bad position.
They're
so
headaches.
Constantly keep your thumb on things that should be checked and should be operating a certain way, and hopefully you bite and stop the bullet before it hits and penetrates.
It's details, baby.
Details matter.
All right.
Cool. Episode 5, Apps and Asphalt. Thank you guys for all 10 of you now. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.